Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I am Tim Walton, an America's GPS partner technology strategist. In this webinar, we're going to be covering Azure Innovate offer for partners. We want to empower you in this session so you can leverage Azure Innovate as your mechanism to drive net new business and unlock innovation at customers. Azure Innovate represents $100 million in investment for driving innovation at customers through partners. AI and innovation is real, and we're seeing thousands of opportunities at our customers. Customers and Microsoft need partners to scale this initiative, and many partners are using this offer to drive over 1,000 net new opportunities in the Americas. Azure Innovate invests in the following solution players with partners, highlighted in green. We will focus on AI in this webinar. What is a solution player? A solution player is a discrete sales execution for a customer demand. Each player has dedicated marketing and budgets from Microsoft to drive the execution of that play with partners and the Microsoft field sellers. So in this case, the Azure Innovate offer is an investment to drive any new innovation at a customer. You can see all the plays that it drives in this slide highlighted in green. There's other offers out there you may know about, such as Azure Migrate and Modernized or AMM. In this slide, you can see plays that AMM invests in highlighted in yellow. Again, Azure Innovate is about driving net new innovation and highly complex application refactoring. Whereas AMM, Azure Migrate and Modernize, invests in migrating compute and data from on-prem or another cloud provider to Azure, so existing workloads. Azure Innovate drives net new innovation. Notice the majority of the solution players have specializations that map to them. Specialization unlocks offers such as Azure Innovate and AMM and also unlocks partner incentives. Specializations are critical to partners. Before moving off of this slide, remember you can use Azure Innovate multiple times at a customer. For example, maybe you're working with a customer on AI and you realize they need to modernize their data estate before doing the AI project. Azure Innovate will invest in that. You may need to do a complex data integration to prepare for this AI. Azure Innovate will invest in that too. You may need to work with the customer to build up their developer productivity. For example, improving their DevSecML FinOps by moving them to GitHub or Azure DevOps. Azure Innovate will invest in that too. Let's dig deeper into what the investment looks like for you, the partner. In this slide, we show the investment work across the life cycle of an opportunity. The opportunity life cycle is called the Microsoft Customer Engagement Methodology, or MSEM. This is Microsoft's methodology for aligning you, the partner, and the customer with Microsoft. It is outcome-based. It is not meant to replace your sales methodology, but to give you a common language for working with Microsoft and our mutual customers. I've added a link in the slide on MSEM training for partners. As I walk you through this slide, the stages of MSEM will begin to make sense. Azure Innovate is an investment that helps in the planning and also the deployment phases of an AI opportunity. The planning phase covers the stages in MSEM, Inspire and Design. deployment covers the stages of empower, achieve, and realize value. Azure Innovate investment should be co-invested and should not cover, and potentially will not cover, the cost of all the work being done by the partner to deliver a solution that's production ready. It is gold to get a proof of concept or a minimal viable product running in the customer's subscription so they can start to see value. Notice the manage and optimize stage here on this slide is not covered by the investment. In this phase, you begin to make solution production ready with all the appropriate monitoring and enterprise scale build out. Let's imagine we have a scenario, and we'll walk from the left to right just so you can completely understand the scenario. Let's imagine you're talking to a customer about AI and they're interested in creating a business-focused chatbot with AI. When I say business-focused, I mean they want to pull in some very specific data about them, and that may be research data that's internal, or it may be customer service data that's held in some database, but it's data and business data specific to that customer. At this point on the slide, we're in the listen and consult stage. You are really early on in your discovery. Around this point, you want to make the customer aware that you can take them on this innovation journey with Azure Innovate. Make them aware that you and Microsoft are going to co-invest in this journey, and the goal is to get a solution that drives true business outcomes into a working proof of concept or minimal viable product in their subscription. If the customer agrees to go on this journey, you can then nominate that customer for Azure Innovate. This is actually done in Partner Center, and we'll talk about that later on in the slides. As we get into the Azure Innovate process, notice there are two flavors. You can see them on the slide: partner-led and field-led. Field-led is where the Microsoft field sellers control the process of nominating a customer for funding. Partner-led is where you, the partner, is in control. I recommend only use field-led for Microsoft strategic accounts and use partner-led everywhere you can. Again, in field-led, the Microsoft sales team for the customer will be doing the submission for the money or the investment, and you and your team must work together to get this submission done. I'm going to focus really on partner-led in this webinar. That is the hero motion. To be able to nominate a customer for Azure Innovate, whether it's field-led or partner-led, you as the partner must have one of the following specializations. In this case, remember, we're focusing on building an AI app. The specializations you will require is either AI and machine learning in Microsoft Azure, or Kubernetes on Microsoft Azure, or build and modernize AI apps with Microsoft Azure. Either one of those will allow you to nominate a customer for Azure Innovate. Just to finish up a little about MSEM, right? As I said at the beginning, it's outcome based. So if you look at the listen and consult phase, what are you ultimately trying to do here? You're trying to find out a stakeholder who has interest. You're trying to initially get what the outcomes the customer wants, and potentially picked what solution play is going to help them that. It may be data and analytics. In our case, it's AI. Once you've got that, you want to prioritize this initiative with the customer. As you move on to inspire and design, and just as we see in Azure Innovate, what are the outcomes that we need for this? The solution play is confirmed. They want to build an AI app. You've orchestrated their team and your team to get this done. The business value is being reviewed and endorsed by the customer. You've created a deployment plan, and the technical and business proof requirements have been identified. That's your planning. Now we move to empower and achieve. On that, you propose your actual deployment to the customer. They review it, and the customer is committed to the proposal. That's when you get your deployment phase funding. When you get to realize value, you've set your resources against the delivery plan, you're putting your change management in place, and the solution is delivered against the agreed outcomes. So you're deploying the solution. The manage and optimize phase, the outcomes is you've updated it, you've deployed it, and perhaps maybe you're optimizing it, the design of that solution. So you're updating the plan, you're creating metrics to make sure that they're truly getting the business value out of what they have built, and that you've also identified potentially other opportunities to do innovation. This is just a brief overview of MSEM, but you can see how Inspire and Design, Empower and Achieve, and Realize Value really fit into the Azure Innovate program. Let's dig a little deeper into what the investments look like for a partner in both the planning and deployment phases. Returning to our customer scenario, we know the customer is interested in creating a business chatbot that utilizes AI. Planning phase pays for partners to do a deep dive into this scenario. Generally, the activities are doing an envision session on the scenario and building out a plan for proof of concept. So in our scenario, we may spend a few days with the customer to fully understand the business outcome that this innovation drives and which technologies we're going to use to create the chatbot. Working with your architect and the customer, we decide we're going to use Azure OpenAI in a typical retrieval augmented generation pattern for the proposed proof of concept. To get paid on the planning in Azure Innovate, you need to ensure you capture the business outcomes. I'm trying to increase sales or decrease costs with the stakeholder, the cost of the solution, how much it's going to take in Azure consumed revenue to host the solution, the architecture diagram, and a deployment plan with dates and times. Think of this as a lightweight statement of work for deploying the proof of concept. In summary, we're paying a partner $10,000 to create a lightweight statement of work to deploy the proof of concept and minimal viable product into production. Once the customer has agreed on the proposal, we can move to the deployment phase of the project. Here you will ensure that all the correct enterprise landing zones are set up and configured and begin to deploy the actual solution into those landing zones. You may have noticed field-led appears to get more money for each phase. This actually may or may not be the case. Field-led is much more complicated to orchestrate and takes much longer. Nominations for partner-led are delivered in days. Field-led can take weeks. Also, the money where field-led comes from is the general end customer incentive funds, which may or may not be there. Remember, partner-led is funded through worldwide at 100 million. So partner-led, again, I highly recommend you try to utilize first before going to field-led. Some partners ask me, can you mix and match? Can you do Azure Innovate partner-led for the planning and then maybe go to field-led for the deployment to potentially get more money? You absolutely can do that. You cannot stack different flavors of Azure Innovate for the same phase. So for example, you can't do a partner-led planning and then do a field-led planning as well. That is not allowed. But you can mix and match between the different phases. All nominations for getting the money for partner-led are done through Partner Center or via Partner Center. Please be aware we want partners to do both planning and deployment phases. Microsoft checks with their governance that most planning nominations are converting to a deployment. We understand that not all planning phases will go to deployment, but most should. Partners should always work with the customer to ensure that they are bought into the whole Azure Innovate journey from planning to deployment phase. Let's dig a little deeper into the engagement activities for the planning phase. In partner-led, you only get paid for the creation of the deployment plan, architecture diagram, and dates and times. You think about it, that completely aligns to the outcome-driven way that Microsoft customer engagement methodology works. So all we're checking is that you came up with the outcome that we're looking for, which is a deployment plan. The customer stakeholder is bought off on that deployment plan. There's an architectural diagram and you've got some dates and times. In field-led, you can see there's many more activities that are required. I do find though that most partners still do these activities, and that's why I'm showing it in the slide. They still do these activities in partner-led. So we will review them as I think they contribute to building a successful deployment plan. Remember, we're paying you $10,000 to do the deployment plan architecture diagram. In order to get to that point, you're going to do some of the engagement activities that are listed here under field. You don't need to prove to Microsoft that you've done them. We actually just assume you've done something like these activities in your planning phase, but we do not check. Solution assessments, the first deliverable that we'll see in field, is essentially running some kind of tooling for application modernizations. A lot of our AI opportunities include some kind of major refactoring of an application for them to get the insights out of their data. These tools are potentially things like Cast or Doctor Migrate or maybe Azure Migrate. This data allows you to size the complexity of the customer's application estate as you're doing the refactoring. Partners don't get paid for this, and it's actually executed through the Microsoft field. So when you think about that as a partner, your engagement may get more complicated because you need to start to include the Microsoft sellers. Our top executing partners, just as some insight for Azure Innovate, will tend to drive an assessment at a customer and do it themselves at no cost to the customer. The data created by these tools is very useful when a solution may require complex refactoring. And it also actually builds really good pipeline for future opportunities, such as refactoring an application or modernizing an application or potentially building a net new one. I have put a link to the program in this slide. If you want Microsoft to run this, again, you need to make sure you're working with the Microsoft field team. Let's get into their workshops, right? Workshops are important. Whenever you're doing a plan and you're building that proof of concept, the deployment plan and architectural diagram, you tend to do this through some kind of collaborative workshop. And we see that all partners do some kind of workshop in partner-led. They're critical for driving that inspiring design phase. Partner-led just is not going to track, again, what type of workshops you're going to do. They're only checking on the deployment plan. In the next slide, we're going to dig deeper on what those workshops are that are listed here and what they mean. I give you some numbers, and it's $10,000. How do we fund this? Well, it's all based off a return on investment. The return on investment in Azure Innovate is 1 to 10. So, for example, if you're asking for 10,000, the solution must drive 100,000 in ACR over 12 months. A question I get from partners is, how do you know in the planning phase what the ACR will be? Because we're just doing the discovery, right? It's a great question. You don't know what the true ACR is. The 10K or whatever funding you're going to use of that 10K gives you awareness that this must be a sizable project. In my experience, to create an enterprise or customer-facing chatbot, in our example, and landing all the appropriate landing zones for OpenAI, the application, networking, and data, you're going to drive up to that value. So just watch out for doing very small projects with small numbers of users. All right, let's dig into the types of workshops we recommend as you're working with the customer in this planning phase. The App Innovation Business Discovery, I think, should be mandatory. This workshop ensures you get the business outcomes and stakeholders for this initiative. A critical requirement, as you need business outcomes to get deployment funding later on. You need the stakeholder, and you need that stakeholder who can have access to the appropriate budgets for this solution. Let me give you an example of one partner that was working with a customer who couldn't articulate why they were doing AI and what the business outcomes were for the project. In this case, the context of the customer are indicating they needed AI to solve a data integration problem. The partner, through the workshop, said, well, that doesn't seem like a business outcome. Are you increasing sales or are you decreasing costs? Potentially, is it decreasing costs? Maybe. So the context IT, the partner asked the context of the customer who was sponsoring the project. Very quickly, the IT team brought in the sponsor, who was the chief marketing officer. The CMO then described what she wanted to do was to get a 360 view of her customers and utilize AI to upsell and cross-sell various other products to the customer. Now that's a business outcome. We can measure it. In fact, that produced 2 Azure Innovate projects. One to modernize their data estate to achieve this 360 view, and the other to create an AI ML app solution for the customer. And that actually was customer facing, so a B2C app that they were creating. The App Envisioning Workshop and Rapid Prototyping Workshop is where you build a prototype of the core technology that we believe that the customer is going to use in the solution. Some partners in this workshop will demo this core technology. Maybe they'll give them a demo of Azure OpenAI. Maybe they'll give them a demo of Fabric if they're doing analytics. In fact, that's something I highly recommend, is to do the demo of all of the typical customer scenarios you see for AI, and you do that in your tenant so you can actually show them how it works. In fact, we actually have multiple examples of this on GitHub, what we call accelerators for the most common solutions for AI. And I've actually put them in this slide so you can have a look at. So I highly recommend that you can do that. Remember, we're still in the planning phase, so you need to buy into the technology and then as quickly as possible get into the deployment phase. An app solution architecture workshop is where you work with a customer and you're doing some whiteboarding and showing them, or in Visio, showing them the architecture diagram of the solution. Most partners use our enterprise landing zones and accelerators to speed up this process. Again, I have that in the slides, the different enterprise landing zones. And so you can get this sort of up very, very quickly and begin to show them. It becomes a discussion point with the customer as well to see if they've got any edge cases that you as the SI should worry about when you start to set up those landing zones. Hopefully that helps. We do not want to be opinionated the way you do your workshops. What we are opinionated in is what is the outcome. And remember, a deployment plan, architectural diagram, dates and times with business outcomes and a stakeholder. Okay, let's dig into the deployment phase. Notice in partner-led, their t-shirt sizes have how large for different size deployments. After you've done your planning, remember, you have a pretty good idea how much this is going to cost in terms of Azure consumed revenue for the solution. So remember, the ROI is 1 to 10. If you look at the different sizes, like extra small, which is around 4,100 a month for the solution, you're going to get paid 5K to do that. To a large, which is about 41,000 a month, a solution which you can get up to 50K of funding for you to do the deployment. What are the outcomes of the deployment? You set up the landing zones and you deploy that solution into those landing zones. So the message I want you to remember is Azure Innovate, partner-led is super simple. I haven't showed you yet the mechanisms of actually nominating a customer and how you prove to Microsoft you actually did the planning phase and the deployment phase. We'll go over that in brief very shortly. Let's just do a quick summary of the things that are supported in the deployment phase. So, as we saw before, there's analytics. So if you're doing some kind of modernization from old analytics solutions like Teradata, Netezza, Exadata, etc., there's money from Azure Innovate to do that. As you can see here, that's the supported patterns that analytics modernization scenario supports and the services that it is intended to drive. Fabric, Synapse, Azure Databricks, etc., etc. To get access to these offers through Azure Innovate, remember you have to have the specialization. So for analytics modernization, you need to know how you do data warehouse migration to Microsoft Azure, that's the specialization, and analytics on Microsoft Azure specialization, which makes sense. In our case, we're doing a greenfield app deployment, right? We're building a brand new AI chatbot for the business, and that's the scenario greenfield app development, right? So we're building a new cloud native app on Azure. We're building a new intelligent app using AI and cloud native principles on Azure. The hero services that it drives are obviously our PaaS hero services such as Kubernetes, app service, etc., etc. In the application, you're going to be using some kind of database, so you're going to be using our databases as a service, and then ultimately, potentially, you're using Azure OpenAI or one of the AI services within Azure. For that one, again, you have to have one of the three specializations that's shown here on the slide. I'm showing this slide just to give you the breadth that Azure Innovate offers to a customer to do net new development. An interesting stat from me, if you looked at all the solution players that you remember on the first slide I was showing you, which are the most profitable for a partner, and it tends, well, statistically, if I look at it, net new application development or highly refactored apps tends to produce, those projects produce bigger statements of work and therefore more profit for a customer. All right, let's just quickly go over how you nominate a customer and get the fundings logistically. So in this slide, you can see this is sort of the process in the Microsoft Commercial Incentive dashboard inside of Partner Center. This is how you do it in the activity. So engagement state. Remember, in our situation, the customer said, "Yeah, I think we want to do a chatbot, a business chatbot that goes against our very specific data." They've got some kind of intent. You tell them about Azure Innovate and the journey you're going to take them on. Then you can go in and nominate the customer. Partner Center in the background is validating whether that customer is eligible, meaning, are we currently doing a project already? We don't want to do multiple parallel projects. That could be risky. Is the customer a strategic customer? In that case, we won't allow partner-led. So it does some kind of validation. Partner then requests the customer consent. So there's a questionnaire that is essentially sent out to the customer and say, do you want to do this with a partner? Let's say we're in the planning phase. Partner Center receives the customer consent. If that doesn't happen, it just expires. No harm, no foul. Then we can move on to the next stage, and that is essentially where you're working with the customer. Remember, building that deployment plan, the dates and times, the architectural diagram. Once you've done that, you submit your proof of execution. This proof of execution is really just a document, and I have it in the slides in the appendix, of where you say, here's the architecture diagram, here's my deployment plan, dates and times, etc. Once you submit that, Microsoft reviews that proof of execution. They may reach out to you if they need additional information, and then they approve it. I tend to see this gets done in days, right? And then once approved, you're going to get that payment. So the process for partner-led is very, very fast. If I was to show you the process for field-led, I'd have to have an hour meeting. So we won't go into that. I've put all the links on here on how do you do the claims, etc. I won't go into that. There's some summary here that I have, which you submit the claims only after the work is complete. Ensure all the proof of execution documents are submitted in a timely manner, right? You don't want to hit that deadline. The survey that's sent out, your start date must be on or after the customer consent date, and the end date of the project must align with the claim submission date. So you don't want your dates to be early, because that's going to cause some problems, right? Like, we did this work and it was like 2 months ago, and yet the customer has signed off just this week. Then we're going to have a situation. I've got a link in here where all of the proof of execution documents are in there. There's also information on how you use Azure Calculator. When you get to the deployment phase, remember, you've got to have a realistic idea of what the solution is going to cost. And then you're telling us things like which subscription IDs you're going to submit this solution in. And that's how we measure, did the solution actually drive Azure consumed revenue? Anyway, I've got that here. I've also got this. If there's anything you're going to remember, apart from you can get money to drive opportunities, if you have any questions, this email, azurepartneroffering@microsoft.com, is the way to go. The team that they have is awesome. They've done thousands of these already. They're really great to work with. And so, to summarize, let's just close it out. Azure Innovate, $100 million investment, for you to take a customer on an AI innovation initiative from planning right to the deployment of an MVP. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, my email is on the slides, and I look forward to hearing from you.